More than 300 stores spread across every province in Canada, a 40-year history that started with a single Toronto location in 1982, and a business model that promises brand name and designer merchandise at prices anywhere from 20 to 60% below what traditional department stores charge. Winners is one of the most visited retail chains in this country, and for millions of Canadians, particularly those living on a fixed income or watching every dollar carefully, it genuinely feels like a deal every single time they walk through the door. But behind the rotating racks, the treasure hunt excitement, and the red clearance stickers, there are things about how this store actually operates that most shoppers, and especially older Canadians who grew up trusting the price on the tag, have never been told. And some of those things directly affect how much money you spend, whether you can get a refund when something goes wrong, how your personal information is protected, and whether the deal you think you are getting is actually as good as it appears on the surface. So today we are going through everything every Canadian should know before they shop at Winners again. First, who actually owns Winners and why that matters more than you might think. Winners is not an independent Canadian retailer. It is a wholly owned subsidiary of TJX Companies, Inc., a Massachusetts-based Fortune 100 corporation that operates more than 5,000 stores across 9 countries. In Canada alone, TJX operates Winners, HomeSense, and Marshalls, all under the umbrella brand TJX Canada. And globally, the company generated tens of billions of dollars in annual revenue in its most recent fiscal year. TJX Canada specifically posted a 10% increase in comparable store sales in the company's fourth quarter of fiscal 2025, which was one of the strongest performing segments across the entire global TJX operation. This matters because whenever you hear that, Winners offers incredible deals out of some kind of charitable generosity toward value-minded Canadian shoppers. The reality is that TJX is one of the most financially successful retailers on the planet, and that success is built on a very specific and calculated model, the off-price buying system, which we will explain right now. Second, the off-price model and what it actually means for the merchandise you are buying. Winners operates on what the retail industry calls an off-price model, which means instead of buying merchandise at the beginning of a season the way department stores do, the company purchases goods opportunistically from a range of sources, including vendor closeouts, where a supplier wants to clear merchandise at the end of a season, co-purchases, where a vendor needs to fulfill a minimum order volume and sells the surplus to Winners, order cancellations, where excess inventory needs to move quickly, and overproduced goods that manufacturers made too many of and need to liquidate. Winners also develop some merchandise under in-house or licensed brand names to fill gaps in inventory, meaning not every item on the rack with an unfamiliar label is actually a genuine outside brand. Some of it was made specifically for TJX stores to supplement the rest of the assortment. The practical consequence of all this for shoppers is that the inventory changes constantly, sizes are not always complete, items may be from past seasons, and the assortment you see on a Tuesday afternoon will look meaningfully different from what you find the following Tuesday morning. This is by design. The company deliberately spreads stock out across locations and rotates it in ways intended to create a sense of scarcity and uniqueness, encouraging you to buy the moment you see something because it might not be there next week. Understanding this psychological mechanic is the first step to shopping Winners on your own terms rather than on theirs. Third, the price tag codes that most shoppers never notice but tell you a great deal about what you are actually looking at. Every item at Winners carries a price tag with a 4-digit number code printed near the upper right corner, and that code tells you the month and year the item arrived in the store. So a tag showing 0924 means September 2024, and a tag showing 1125 means November 2025. This date code matters for a straightforward reason. The longer an item has been sitting on the rack without selling, the more likely it is that the store would be willing to mark it down further, or that a red clearance sticker is already coming. Consumer shopping communities have documented that items sitting 4 or more weeks past their arrival date are often the best candidates for asking a store associate whether an additional reduction is possible, and on higher ticket items like luggage, outerwear, or home goods, simply asking politely and pointing to the tag date has resulted in further Discounts for some shoppers, the color of the tag itself is also meaningful. White tags indicate the item is at its standard off-price selling price. Red tags indicate the item has already been moved to clearance pricing, which means the store is actively trying to move it. And yellow tags indicate final clearance pricing, which is typically as low as the item will go before the store simply removes it from the floor entirely. Markdowns at Winners are processed first thing in the morning, which means shoppers who arrive when the store opens have the best chance of finding newly reduced items before anyone else has gone through them. Fourth, the January and February final clearance sales that represent the single best time of year to shop at Winners. If price is your top priority, according to people who have worked inside the stores, the annual final clearance events held in January and February are when Winners pricing drops to its absolute lowest. This is the period when items that have been sitting through the holiday season, the fall, and any earlier clearance rounds get marked to genuinely low prices. Some items reach a single dollar or just above it during this window, and the categories that tend to offer the most dramatic reductions during this period include seasonal decor, apparel from the previous fall and winter collections, giftware, and home goods that were stocked for the holiday period. If you are someone who shops Winners regularly throughout the year and have the patience to wait, buying winter coats, heavy blankets, or seasonal home goods in late January rather than October will almost certainly get you a meaningfully lower price on the same quality of merchandise. Fifth, the return policy that catches shoppers off guard more than almost any other policy at this store, and why it is especially important for seniors and older Canadians on fixed incomes to understand before they buy anything. Winners operates a standard 10-day return window for most items, meaning you have 10 days from the date of purchase to bring something back with your original receipt and with tags still attached in order to receive a refund to your original payment method. After that 10-day window closes, the refund option disappears and any accepted return will be issued in the form of a store gift card rather than cash back to your original payment. If you do not have the original receipt at all, the return is entirely at the discretion of the store and can be declined outright. And if a return without a receipt is accepted, the refund will come as a gift card, and you will be required to provide government-issued photo identification. There is one important exception to the 10-day standard window. Shoppers who are enrolled in the free TJX Canada Style Plus loyalty program have their return window extended from 10 days to 30 days, which triples the amount of time available to decide whether an item is worth keeping. This distinction matters enormously for anyone on a fixed income, a senior, or anyone who buys gifts at Winners for other people, because 10 days is genuinely not very long, particularly if you purchase something and then discover a defect only after the first wash or the first time you actually use the item. The practical lesson here is straightforward. Sign up for the Freestyle Plus loyalty program before your next purchase if you have not already done so, because it costs nothing and immediately gives you 30 days instead of 10. Always keep your receipt until the return window fully closes and inspect any item carefully before you leave the store rather than assuming you can easily return it later if something turns out to be wrong. Sixth, the data breach that most Winners shoppers in Canada have either forgotten or never knew happened. This one goes back further in time, but it is part of the documented public record involving Winners and its parent company TJX. And every Canadian who has ever paid for a purchase at Winners with a credit or debit card deserves to know it happened. In January 2007, TJX disclosed publicly that its computer systems had been breached by hackers who had gained unauthorized access to the personal information of an estimated 45.7 million payment cards across Canada, the United States, Puerto Rico, the United Kingdom, and Ireland. In Canada, this breach directly affected customers who had shopped at Winners and HomeSense locations, and the Office of the Privacy Commissioner of Canada and the Office of the Information and Privacy Commissioner of Alberta conducted a joint investigation into the incident. The Privacy Commissioner of Canada at the time, Jennifer Stoddart, found that TJX had collected too much personal information, retained it for longer than was necessary or appropriate, and protected it with outdated and inadequate encryption technology. Specifically, the company had been using WEP wireless encryption, which was already known to be weak and insecure at the time. The commissioner concluded the breach was foreseeable and preventable, and that TJX had failed to implement adequate security safeguards to protect its customers. The breach had exposed not only credit and debit card numbers, but in some cases also driver's license numbers that had been collected from customers who returned merchandise without receipts, which is precisely the kind of information older Canadians are often asked to provide at a winner's return desk today. The reason this history matters in 2026 is not to suggest the company's systems are still inadequate. The breach prompted significant changes, and it happened nearly 2 decades ago. But it is a documented example of how a retailer's data collection and retention practices can directly harm customers. And it is a reminder that any time you hand over your driver's license at a return desk without a receipt, that information is being collected and stored. And it is worth knowing that this specific practice was already implicated in one of the largest retail data breaches in Canadian history. Seventh, the merchandise quality issue that shows up repeatedly in consumer feedback, and that is particularly relevant when shopping for items like clothing, shoes, and accessories at Winners. Product quality complaints are a recurring theme in verified consumer reviews and retail discussion communities focused on Winners Canada. The off-price business model means that merchandise arrives from a wide variety of sources and at varying quality levels, and because Winners does not offer the return privileges to suppliers that a traditional department store might, the company takes goods essentially as is and sells them in whatever condition they arrive. Some items at Winners are genuinely excellent quality at a dramatically lower price than a comparable item at a full-price retailer. But some items, particularly in lower-priced apparel categories, are manufactured specifically for off-price retail channels and are not the same quality as items that were originally produced for department store sale. Consumer communities focused on Winners shopping specifically note that some brands on the rack were manufactured under license by TJX itself for sale in its own stores rather than being genuine outside brand merchandise. The safest approach when shopping for clothing, footwear, or accessories at Winners is to check the tag inside the garment near the bottom hem. If it says TJX Europe or a similar TJX affiliated label rather than the brand name printed on the main care label, that item was made by TJX specifically for its own retail channels, which is not necessarily a problem, but it is worth knowing before you assume you are getting a genuine external brand at a steep discount. Eighth, the psychological architecture of the store itself and how it is specifically designed to increase the amount you spend beyond what you came in for. The off-price treasure hunt format is not accidental. It is a carefully designed retail experience built to maximize the time you spend in the store and the number of unplanned items that end up in your cart. Winners deliberately limits the depth of its merchandise assortment, meaning sizes and quantities are kept artificially scarce to create a sense of urgency. The message the format communicates is that if you do not take this now, it will be gone. And that message works on a deep psychological level because it creates genuine decision pressure where a more relaxed shopping environment would not. Stock is intentionally spread out unevenly across locations to make each store feel unique, which is one of the reasons devoted Winners shoppers will travel to multiple locations looking for specific items rather than simply buying online. The store also does not currently operate a full online shopping platform for general merchandise in Canada, which means your only access to the inventory is through physically being in a store. And while you are physically in the store, the layout, the rack placement, and the sample display areas are all organized to pull you through as many departments as possible on your way to wherever you are actually headed. For seniors and older shoppers who may find a long browsing session physically tiring, but who also feel the genuine psychological pull of the treasure hunt experience, the simple and practical defense is to set a time limit before you walk in. Decide what category or specific item you are looking for. Go to that section first rather than browsing from the entrance, and leave once you have made your decision rather than continuing to browse. Ninth, how to use the Style Plus loyalty program properly and what it actually gives you beyond the extended return window. The TJX Canada Style Plus program is free to join and designed to reward repeat shoppers. The extended return window from 10 to 30 days is the most immediately practical benefit for most shoppers because it directly affects your ability to return something that turns out to be wrong. But the program also allows winners to send you information about promotions, new arrivals, and sale events through email, which can be useful for timing larger purchases around the discount periods mentioned earlier. The January and February final clearance window in particular is worth knowing about in advance, so you can plan a trip specifically around it. Rather than discovering it randomly, the program requires a valid email address and basic registration, and it is available online or can be initiated at the checkout when you are making a purchase. If you regularly shop at Winners and have not yet enrolled, doing so before your next purchase is the single easiest change you can make that immediately increases your consumer protections in the store at no cost. 11th, the gift card rules that catch shoppers off guard and the pricing comparison habit that saves you from overpaying for the convenience of a recognizable name. Winners sells gift cards in store, and they are a popular choice for birthdays and holidays. But the fine print matters. Gift cards at Winners are generally not refundable and cannot be exchanged for cash. And if a gift card recipient tries to return an item purchased with a gift card, the refund will typically be issued back onto a gift card rather than any other payment method, which means the money stays locked inside the Winners ecosystem regardless of what the recipient actually wants to do with it. This is not unique to Winners among Canadian retailers, but it is worth understanding before you hand someone a gift card rather than simply buying them the item directly. Separately, one of the most important habits any Canadian shopper can develop before buying something at Winners is to do a quick price check on the same or a similar item at another retailer. The off-price model genuinely does deliver real savings on many items, particularly branded goods that are being liquidated from overstock or canceled orders, but it does not deliver savings on everything. Some items at Winners, particularly those manufactured specifically for the TJX retail channel under licensed brand names, are priced in a way that looks like a discount relative to a fictional regular retail price printed on the tag, but which does not actually represent a meaningful saving relative to what you would pay for a comparable item at a Canadian Tire, a Hudson's Bay clearance rack, or even an Amazon Canada listing. The most reliable way to verify that a Winners price is genuinely better than your alternatives is simply to check the price on your phone before you put the item in your cart. 30 seconds with a price comparison is the fastest and most reliable tool available to any shopper, and it is especially valuable for older Canadians on fixed incomes for whom the gap between a genuine 25% saving and a 0% saving on the same dollar amount has real consequences on a monthly budget. 12th, every single time you shop at Winners, always keep your receipt until at least 30 days have passed if you are a Style Plus member, or until 10 days have passed if you are not. Because once those windows close, the store has no obligation to refund your original payment method. Always check the price tag date code in the upper right corner before you buy anything at a standard price. And if the date code is 4 or more weeks old and the item has not yet been moved to a red clearance tag, it is reasonable to politely ask a store associate whether a further reduction is being considered or has already been processed in the system. Even if the sticker has not yet been changed, always check the tag inside clothing near the bottom hem to understand whether the item is a genuine outside brand or TJX manufactured merchandise. Because this tells you something real about what you are actually buying. Shop earlier in the day if possible, because markdowns are processed first thing in the morning, and the shoppers who arrive when the store opens have first access to newly reduced items. Plan any major discretionary purchases for the January and February final clearance period when prices are at their lowest, rather than buying in peak season at the standard off-price price. Be aware that your driver's license information will be collected if you attempt a return without a receipt, and factor in the privacy implications of providing that documentation when deciding whether to register for Style Plus instead, so that your account history can serve as your purchase verification. And finally, recognize the treasure hunt experience for what it is. A psychologically effective retail format designed to keep you browsing longer and spending more than you planned. The format is entertaining and genuinely can deliver Real value, but only if you are shopping with a clear purpose rather than simply responding to the urgency the store experience is designed to create. Winners built one of the most successful retail businesses in Canadian history by delivering genuine value on a rotating assortment of branded merchandise. And for millions of households across this country, it remains a genuinely useful place to shop, particularly for those managing a tight household budget. But useful does not mean without complexity, and the shoppers who come out consistently ahead at Winners are the ones who understand the return window before they buy, who know how to read the date code on the tag, who have their Style Plus membership active, and who walk in with a plan rather than simply following wherever the format leads them. So the next time you are standing in a Winners aisle with something interesting in your hand and the quiet pressure of